Hi, this is Miss Fernandi. We are continuing to read Chasing Vermeer by Blue Balliett. We are on chapter 4, Picasso's life. Remember that in the last chapter, Calder and Petra and their teacher in the class went to the Chicago Art Institute and ended up in a storage closet in a little bit of trouble. Chapter 4, Picasso's lie. Miss Hussey had an extra gleam the next morning. She agreed that the trip to the museum hadn't exactly worked. They'd found 3 religious scrolls and the letter with the red seal, but that was it. Miss Hussey said she'd enjoyed the search. She didn't seem upset at all. You know, one of my favorite painters was interested in letters and made them important in a bunch of his paintings. Maybe that's why I thought we'd see more of them. Funny how you can project things. She changed the subject, her voice suddenly businesslike. So, what now? Have we reached any conclusions about communication? Petra raised her hand. Maybe that it's hard to study. How about we work on something else to do with art? She liked exploring the Art Institute. She was sure they could come up with another worthwhile subject to investigate. Denise said, I thought some of the art was pretty gross. I mean, a lot of it was gory and violent or fat and naked or plain old boring. Just people dressed up. I mean, you couldn't make me live with some of those pictures. There was a murmur of agreement. Denise sniffed happily. I doubt you'll need to, Denise, Miss Hussey said evenly, crossing her arms. Then she stood very still. She stood still and looked at the ceiling. When she didn't move, the room grew quiet. You know, Miss Hussey said finally, Picasso said that art is a lie, but a lie that tells the truth. She was pacing now. Lies and art. It's an ancient problem. So if we work with art, she said slowly, we'll have to figure out something else first. What makes an object a piece of art? I'm going to show you this picture. I'm sure you're looking at it too. There's Miss Hussey. And you can see Calder and his pentominoes. Denise rolled her eyes but stayed quiet. Here's what I want you to do. Start by choosing one item at home that feels like a work of art to you. It can be anything. Don't ask anyone for advice. This has to be your own thinking. Describe this object for us without saying what it is. And this time, I won't let you off the hook. She grinned. We'll read some of your ideas aloud. Calder wondered what Picasso had meant. Was it that art wasn't exactly the real world, but it said something real? He began thinking up other combinations of art, a lie, and the truth that made sense. It worked almost like the logical arrangements of 5 squares that made up each piece of his set of pentominoes. How about, art is the truth that tells a lie? Maybe all of life was about rearranging a few simple ideas. Calder, smiling at the chalkboard, now squirmed in his chair with excitement at the thought. If he could just get to those simple ideas with a little practice, he'd be a cross between Einstein and the mathematician Ramanujan, or maybe Ben Franklin. Calder? He was twisted sideways in his chair, his arm resting on his head. His pentominoes had somehow gotten onto his desk. He scooped them hurriedly into his pocket, but one fell to the floor. Calder, did you want to say something? It looked like your hand was up, Miss Hussey said. I was just thinking, about what Picasso said, but I'm still thinking, he finished. There was a ripple of unfriendly laughter from the class around him, and Calder could feel the back of his neck getting hot. If only Tommy had been there, he would have elbowed Calder earlier and gotten him back on target. The bell rang. Denise stepped on Calder's pentomino piece just as he reached down to get it. Her knee hit him in the ear. Oops, sorry, I stepped on your toy. She laughed and gave the plastic piece under her foot an extra scuff. It shot under Miss Hussey's desk. Sorry, your feet are so big, Calder heard Petra muttering behind him. Not sure he'd heard right, he turned to look for Petra, but she was gone. Calder groped around for his pentomino as his teacher erased the board. He wanted to tell Miss Hussey that he'd been thinking about important stuff, but he didn't know how to say it. Miss Hussey turned toward him and smiled. I know, Calder. I get caught up in my own ideas too. Maybe one day I'll try having us all write down daydreams for a week and see what we come up with. Maybe we'll decide they're a lot more important than what I thought we were supposed to be working on. Calder nodded gratefully. Miss Hussey was the best. As he wiped off his pentomino piece, he looked at the letter T. T for what? Trouble? But why trouble? There was nothing at home that felt like a piece of art. Petra considered an embroidered pillow, but it had a big tear in it. She found a silk caterpillar kite, but it had lost one eye. She thought of the stick her mom used to make a bun for her hair, the one with amber on it, but it had been missing for days. What was art anyway? The more she thought about it, the stranger it seemed. What made an invented object special? Why were some man-made things pleasing and others not? Why wasn't a regular mixing bowl or a spoon or a light bulb a piece of art? What made certain objects land in museums and others in the trash? She guessed that most people who went to museums didn't ask that question. They just believed that what they were looking at, that they were looking at something valuable or beautiful or interesting. They didn't do any hard thinking about it. She wasn't going to be that kind of a person, ever. She thought about pieces at the Art Institute that made her feel as if she could leave everything predictable behind. She always felt that way when she stood in front of Caillebott's Rainy Day painting. The wet cobblestones underfoot, the people going places in their long skirts and top hats, the inviting turn of the street. This was art that was an adventure. It led her into another world. It made familiar stuff seem mysterious. It sent her back to her life feeling a little different, at least for a few minutes. She was still thinking about Caillebott's Paris street on her way to the grocery store. If he had painted Harper Avenue, would it have looked just as intriguing? As she approached the corner, she noticed the man with suspenders, the one who had talked to Miss Hussey, step out of the front door of Powell's, look around, and drop a book into the giveaway box outside. She sped up. The book had a cloth cover with several dark stains, and the paper was thick and creamy, soft at the edges. The title jumped out at her. Lo! The illustrations were done in black and white. Distorted, rubbery figures clutched each other or screamed. She read a few paragraphs. Terrified horses, up on their hind legs, hoofing a storm of frogs. Frenzied springboks, capering their exasperations against frogs that were tickling them. Storekeepers in London gaping at frogs that were tapping on their window panes. We shall pick up an existence by its frogs. Wise men have tried other ways. They have tried to understand our state of being by grasping at its stars, or its arts, or its economics. But if there is an underlying oneness of all things, it does not matter where we begin, whether with stars or laws of supply and demand, or frogs, or Napoleon Bonaparte. One measures a circle beginning anywhere. I have collected 294 records of showers of living things. What? Petra flipped back to the front and saw that the book had been written in 1931 by a man named Charles Fort. She tucked it under her arm. What do you think of that? I think that was the weirdest thing, one of the weirder things I read. Also, I really want to find that piece of art, Caillebott, the Frenchman who painted Paris on a rainy day. Maybe I'll put that in a PowerPoint. Okay.